Polynomials is the same thing as collecting like terms. The only difference is if there is a subtraction sign, you have one extra step. So when it's addition, you can ignore the parentheses. And if you want to, you can rearrange it so that x's are together and y's are together. Oh, that 9 should have a y on it. But you don't have to. You take your two x's, you add them together, you take your two y's, you add them together. 4 plus 2 is 6, 3 plus 9 is 12. Done. Okay. Again, you want like terms together, so like I said, you don't even have to move them or do anything to it. I can say 6 plus 8 is 14. 5 plus 4 is 9. Done. It's only when you have subtraction that you have one extra step to worry about. And what I need to do is I need to take this subtraction and I need to distribute it to those numbers inside the parentheses. So however many numbers are inside the parentheses, all of those signs will change. The first parenthesis stays the same. Then this becomes minus 2a minus 4b. So they were positive, now they're negative. Now I can subtract my a's. So 5a and negative 2a is 3a. 9b and negative 4b is 5b. Okay. Again, I have subtraction, so I need to distribute it. So 11m minus 7n stays the same, and then this becomes negative 2m and negative 6n. 11 minus 2 is 9. Negative 7 and negative 6 is negative 13. Okay. The biggest mistake I ever see people make is that they will try to consider all of the same letter, the same terms. Your exponent part has to match as well. So m and m squared aren't the same thing. So you can't add those together. Yes, they're both m's, but m and m squared are two different things. So m's go together and then m squareds go together. So, oh, wrong pen. So I have m squared and then another m squared, and then I have a minus m and a plus 2m. So this gives me 2m squared plus m. Not too bad, I hope. The minuses are still the same. No, that's ugly. I need to distribute that negative. And I get x squared minus 3x minus 2x squared minus 5x. X squared minus 2x squared is negative x squared. Negative 3x and negative 5x are negative 8x. It doesn't matter how many terms there are. You find the ones that match and you combine them. Oh, look, the lonely G has nobody to go with, so he stays by himself. And then the negative 2 and the 3 go together. K squared, so 4 plus 6 is 10. 2k, negative 5k gives me negative 3k. And then there's a lonely 9. by himself, so he just hangs out. And I want to change this one, actually. I'm going to change that to subtraction. Because, again, it doesn't matter how many terms are in the parentheses. We want to distribute that negative to all of them. So I have this first set of parentheses stays the same. The second set of parentheses stays the same. It's that last set, because I've made it a minus, that all the signs change. And I have 2x squared, x squared, and negative 3x squared. So I'm going to write over here, I have 2 plus 1 minus 3 is 0. So that gives me 0x squared, so the x squareds went away. And then I have negative 6 plus 4 minus 1. So that's negative 2 minus 1 is negative 3, so I have negative 3x. And then I have negative 2 and negative 5, so that gives me minus 7. Okay, we have multiplying a polynomial by a monomial. Okay, so what we do is we're going to distribute. Okay, and what that means is we multiply everything inside. Okay. So in this case we have an a. So I'm going to take this a and I'm going to do a times 4a and a times 3. Okay, so to write that out, it would be a times 4a plus a times 3. That's the distribution, but we don't obviously write it that way. But a times 4a, a times a is a squared, because it's 1 plus 1 is 2. And then a times 3 is 3a. Okay. If we have a negative number outside, the negative gets multiplied too. So this is negative c times 11c and negative c times 4. So c times c is c squared. Negative times positive is negative. So I have a negative 11c squared and then negative 4c. Okay. Questions so far? Okay.
So you multiply
Okay, so here I'm going to multiply an x. So I have x times 2x, x times negative 5. The 2 doesn't change. X times x is x squared. X times negative 5 gives me negative 5x. So that's with just the letter. If I have, not blue, if I have a number out front with the variable 2y times y, that gives me 2y squared, and then 2y times negative 4, I multiply the y and the negative 4. Yeah. Multiply with a letter and a number. You multiply the numbers and then you multiply letters. Just kind of the same way as we were doing when we had the monomial times the monomial, except this time it's, instead of times one thing, it's going to be times two things. So negative 3n times n squared and also times 2n. So I have negative 3 times 1, so that stays negative 3. N times n squared is n to the third. And then negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. N times n is n squared. Or h times 3h and negative 5. So I get 12h squared and negative 20h. Okay, questions so far? I'm just going to skip down to number 9. If I have 3 terms or more, yeah. Here, 4 times negative 5 gives me the negative 20. The numbers are like terms. Yeah, so it's just like, remember when we were multiplying monomials and I said like 3x squared y times 10x y to the third or something, and I said you had to multiply the parts that match. So 3 times 10 gives me 30, and x squared times x and y times y to the third. This is the same idea, but instead of being, you know, just a monomial, I could have like 3x times 10x plus 4 or something. So I multiply 3 times 10, that gives me 30. X times x is x squared. Then I do 3 times 4, which gives me 12, and then x times, so it just stays x. So I'm still doing the things that are like each other. It's just I'm doing it twice instead of just once. And in this case, I'm going to do it 3 times. Times the 1, times the negative 9b, and times the negative b squared. So however many things are inside the parentheses, that's how many times you have to multiply. So I'm going to do 4b times 1 times negative 9 times negative 2. So negative 4 times positive 1 is negative 4b. Negative 4 times negative 9 is positive 36, and then b times b is b squared. And then negative 4 times negative 2 is positive 8, and then b times b squared is b to the third. So a little better. If I have, again, 3 things, so I do 6y times negative 5, 6y times negative y, 6y times 4y squared. So 6 times negative 5 is negative 30, and then the y just hangs out. 6 times negative 1 is negative 6. Y times y is y squared. And then 6 times 4 is 24. And then I have y times y squared is y to the third. Any questions? Final ones. If I have an exponent outside, that's okay too. It's just the same process. I'm multiplying in. So if 2 times 2 is 4, m squared times m squared gives me m to the fourth. 2 times 3 is 6. M squared times m is m to the third. And then 2 times negative 5 is negative 10, and there's no m, so it just stays m squared. Unless, of course, the 4 was on the bottom, in which case the x squared is on the bottom because the 4 was. If you're raising to a power, then you multiply the exponents. So this is x to the 10th. And then if you're adding, the exponent stays the same. So 2x to the third plus 4x is going to be 6x, sorry, x to the third, to the third. So the exponents have to match, and then it stays the same. And it'll be the same with subtracting also. So if I had like 3x minus 2x, it's just going to give me an x, but the exponent stays the same. And that doesn't matter. I could make these fifths or whatever, but it would still stay the same. So when you multiply, divide, or raise to a power, the exponent changes, but when you're just adding or subtracting, the exponent stays the same. And these examples here, what we're doing is we're multiplying. So we add the exponents. Multiply the number part, add the exponent part. Okay. Does that help? Sometimes we do a combination of both. You have to multiply first and then collect like terms. So the first step is to distribute, which is to multiply. And then the second step is to add the like terms. Okay, so for number 13, I'm going to distribute that W in, and that's going to give me, you know what I'm going to do real quick, sorry. I'm going to give myself more room.
Did you do 7.5 today and 7.6?
7, 5, and 6, yes. Okay, so I distributed in that W, so I have W times 3W, which will give me 3W squared. W times 2 is 2W. And then this 5W just sort of stayed there. It didn't go away or anything. So I just bring it down. Then I add the like terms, which are the 2W and the 5W. So I get 3W squared plus 7W. So I distributed those, which gave me this first part. And then that hung out. And then once I had that part, these two matched, so I could add them together. So here, if I distribute this F, I get 5F squared minus 3F. And then the 2F just hangs out. And then I have F's that match, so I can put those together. Yeah, so I borrowed $3. I borrowed $2 more, so I owe you 5. Same here. If I take this 2x, I'm going to multiply it in. 2x times 3x squared is going to give me 6x to the third. 2x times 4 is going to give me 8x. And then this negative 3x to the third was already there. And then those x to the thirds match. So when I add them together, I'm going to have 6 minus 3, so that's 3. And that 8x is just doesn't have anybody to match with, so it stays. It just hangs out. Sometimes we have multiple to do, so I distribute the 4b into this one, and then I take this negative 2 and distribute it into that one. So 4b times negative 5b is negative 20b. 4b times negative 3 is negative 12b. Then I do negative 2 times b squared. Negative 2 times negative 7b, so that's 14b. And then negative 2 times negative 4 is 8. And then I go through and I find all my like terms. I have b and b.
Why would that be minus 20b instead of minus 20?
Oh, it is b squared. You're right. Thank you. Let me erase those in. Good catch. Okay, so I have b squared and b squared. I have b and b. And then I have 8 by itself. So I have negative 20 and negative 2, so that's negative 22. And then I have negative 12 and positive 14, so that's plus 2, and then 8.
By subtraction signs, it's the same as making a number negative.
Yeah, subtraction and negative are the same. So if you see 5 minus 2, that's the same thing as 5 plus negative 2. Yeah. So if I do the 3m's, that gives me 9m squared plus 18m. And don't forget this right here. Keep that minus with the 3 because that needs to be multiplied in also. So it becomes negative 3 times m squared, so that's negative 3m squared. Negative 3 times 4m is negative 12m, and then negative 3 times 1 is negative 3. You have m squareds that match, and then you have 18 and 12m, and then poor little lonely -3 over here. So 9 and -3 is 6. 18 and -12 is 6. And then lonely little -3.